Like most people, you've probably got a lot going on. So if you can't make it to a Charles Bookwalter for Congress town hall, we'll bring the town hall to you. Join Charles Bookwalter Thursday nights at 7 p.m. for a digital town hall, streaming live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Jump into the comments section to join in the conversation. Make a comment or ask Charles for his opinions on the issues that are most important to you. That's the Charles Bookwalter for Congress digital town hall, streaming live beginning at 7 p.m. Thursday nights, exclusively on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Search Bookwalter for Congress to learn more.
The more that a broken system tells you that you're wrong, the more certain you should be that you must keep pushing ahead. Because it's the outsiders who change the world and who make a real and lasting difference. Nothing worth doing ever came easy. Treat the word impossible as nothing more than motivation. The future belongs to the people who follow their heart no matter what the critics say. We must always remember that we share one home and one glorious destiny. We all bleed the same red blood of patriots. We all salute the same great American flag. Our best days are yet to come.
What are the people of Indiana's 4th District saying about Jim Baird voting with Democrats to pass Joe Biden's $1.2 trillion spending bill? On May 7th, vote no to Jim Baird.
I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I approve this message.
What are the people of Indiana's 4th District saying about Jim Baird voting with Democrats to pass Joe Biden's $1.2 trillion spending bill? On May 7th, vote no to Jim Baird.
I'm Charles Bookwalter, and I approve this message.
If we look to the answer as to why for so many years we achieved so much, prospered as no other people on earth, it was because here in this land, we unleashed the energy and individual genius of man to a greater extent than has ever been done before. Freedom and the dignity of the individual have been more available and assured here than in any other place on earth. The price for this freedom at times has been high, but we have never been unwilling to pay that price. Those who say that we're in a time when there are no heroes, they just don't know where to look. The sloping hills of Arlington National Cemetery, with its row upon row of simple white markers bearing crosses or stars of David, they add up to only a tiny fraction of the price that has been paid for our freedom. Each one of those markers is a monument to the kind of hero I spoke of earlier. Their lives ended in places called Belleau Wood, the Argonne, Omaha Beach, Salerno, and halfway around the world on Guadalcanal, Tarawa, Pork Chop Hill, the Chosin Reservoir, and in 100 rice paddies and jungles of a place called Vietnam. Under one such marker lies a young man, Martin Treptow, who left his job in a small-town barber shop in 1917 to go to France with the famed Rainbow Division. There on the Western Front, he was killed trying to carry a message between battalions under heavy artillery fire. We're told that on his body was found a diary. On the flyleaf, under the heading, My Pledge, he had written these words: America must win this war. Therefore I will work, I will save, I will sacrifice, I will endure. I will fight cheerfully and do my utmost as if the issue of the whole struggle depended on me alone. We must realize that no arsenal or no weapon in the arsenals of the world is so formidable as the will and moral courage of free men and women. It is a weapon our adversaries in today's world do not have. It is a weapon that we as Americans do have. Let that be understood by those who practice terrorism and prey upon their neighbors. As for the enemies of freedom, those who are potential adversaries, they will be reminded that peace is the highest aspiration of the American people. We will negotiate for it, sacrifice for it. We will not surrender for it now or ever. We are Americans.
This is the Charles Bookwalter for Congress Digital Town Hall.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to
the about the issues
our
important to
Lizton
you.
Town Hall.
Jump into the comments and join the conversation. Now, without further ado, here's your host, congressional candidate for Indiana's 4th District, Charles Bookwalter.
All right, everyone. Welcome today to our Lizton Town Hall. Thanks for coming out. It's not the best weather, sunny, but it's a little cold. But I appreciate you all coming out here tonight. Tonight we're streaming this tonight on our X and Facebook and YouTube. My name is Charles Bookwalter. I'm running for Congress to represent you in the 4th Congressional District. Thanks for coming out. I recognize some faces. Thank you very much. And so thank you for coming out, because there's going to, at the end of this, there's going to be an important ask, and these are the kinds of people that we need to ask to do these important things. So, so before I start, let's introduce a couple people, if you want, that are running for other offices. If you want to come up here, do you want to say something? Oh, here's a mic.
Thank you, Mr. Bookwalter.
Yeah, of course.
And it's an honor to be here tonight with you. My name's Joe Baddick. I'm running for State Representative District 28. I want to make a difference. I want the seat in the House to be the voice of the people again. And you've got my full support, my prayers, and I'm there with you, Charles.
Yep, thank you very much, sir. Yep. Anybody else? I was just telling Joe Baddick, there was my observation of the Boone County Candidate Forum that we had a few weeks ago was that the incumbent in is it 28? 28? Yeah, in State House 28. It's just crazy when you go to these forums now, and people are actually admitting that they screwed up during COVID. They're like, oh yeah, well, the government should never have that kind of authority or power or anything like that. And these are the same people that did nothing to stand up against it. They're the same people that voted for House Bill 1209 here in Indiana, that took away power from the local health departments, put it in the state. They like rewarded themselves for bungling and mismanaging COVID. And so the incumbent said that the other day and admitted right there on the forum, yeah, that was a scam. We should never have mass children. We shouldn't have shut things down. We shouldn't have done that in the state of Indiana. And we got it all wrong. And I've been elected here for however many terms, and I want your vote again.
13.
How many?
13.
13 terms or 13 years?
13 terms.
Oh my goodness. 13 terms. So that's why we need people like Joe Baddick. It's happening all over Indiana. We all see what's happening as these positions are being challenged. Precinct committeeman, delegate, state rep, Congress is being challenged across the board. So some notes, I got some notes that I need to read to make sure I hit that. Tomorrow night we're going to be in Fountain County doing another live. It's our Thursday night live stream. We're doing it in Fountain County tonight. The 4th District is half of Fountain County, but the reason we're doing it is because there's a big opposition to solar event that's occurring before one of their planning meetings. So we're going there with other people to speak out against it and try to stop it. You have a commissioner that's like the president of the commission that already has a contract in place with one of these solar companies that they're voting on to bring these solar companies in with our taxpayer dollars. So that's why we're going there to speak up. We're asking them to consider what was done in Boone County, which is put a moratorium on solar fields in the counties. And Boone County passed it. Yeah. So Boone County could do so. It's a model for how we can do it in other counties. Saturday morning, there's teams all over knocking on doors. Again, most people have heard the number. We've knocked on about 25,000 doors up to this point. We have an app that tracks all this. So a lot of support knocking on doors. Tomorrow we're focusing some efforts in Morgan County. So if anyone's in Morgan County and you want to come out and join us, reach out to the campaign, Mike at bookwalterforcongress.com, and we can put you in touch with the coordinator there. We'll also be in Montgomery County tomorrow, knocking on doors, Jasper County, Hendricks County, and Tippecanoe County. So if you have any questions and you want to help out, you can email Mike at bookwalterforcongress.com, and he'll put you in touch with the coordinator. Saturday night, we'll be visiting Carroll County. They asked, who wants to see a debate with Jim Baird?
Yo.
Who would like to ask Congressman Baird some questions about voting record and have a debate and ask 2 questions? What would you do in these scenarios? Unfortunately, he is not. I'm sorry. Is there?
Available.
Yeah. Well, we gave so many dates and so many months of time to just do at least one, but it doesn't happen. I can tell you, I've said it before, that if we win this primary, we win the general, I'll be back here. I'll debate. The party will challenge me, and I'll debate anybody. I've already debated Democrats. I'll debate anybody in the 4th District about this position, and I'll have to do it every few years, and I'll show up. I'd rather do a debate than a forum. The forum, like, did anyone watch the gubernatorial forum last night? Yeah, and it was like, oh, geez. And these forums are the same questions over and over again. And they're the same questions that we've all heard for the last few decades. They're the same questions with the same responses. And that's how you can kind of control that narrative. Like, everything that you can talk about is on a 3x5 card, and that's all you can talk about, right? And that's how these forums keep you in that instead of having a debate where people could ask questions that aren't scripted. And then on May 2nd, we're going to have another town hall meeting in Plainfield. That'll be our final town hall meeting, I believe, heading into the primary there. So we got a lot on our plate in the next few weeks. On top of that, the whole staff is out door knocking every single day. All right. So, you know, most of you know why I'm running. Most of you heard this before, but I'll just go into it briefly. That, you know, why are we doing this? Why are there so many people coming out and doing this? Because COVID and the response to COVID completely disrupted so many of our lives, and it continues to. And when that opened up a few eyes to what was going on, people started looking back. They saw what happened to President Trump in 2016 and 2020. COVID happened. We see all the bungling of this and this overreach by government, and people decided that it's time to get involved. So that's why there's been this massive groundswell, this grassroots campaign. But we have 2 gubernatorial candidates that are grassroots candidates that look very attractive. We have candidates in precinct committeemen, delegates, state, across the board that are running for office and doing it for the first time. And this year the party had to kick off, I don't even know what the total number is, 500 or so candidates that they kicked off the ballot because they're challenging so many people. They just hadn't voted in 2 primaries. It only voted in 1 primary. So the party was kicking these people off, but they're patriots that are trying to get involved for the first time. But that's really what has gotten me involved in the last few years, to get out in the district, to go to all these meetings that we're supposed to be going to, because that's how this works. But most of us don't have time, but we have to go to these commissioner meetings and these planning meetings. Otherwise, just a few people are making these decisions about how our communities work. And when people ask me what the biggest issue of the day, I say, well, is it short-term or long-term? Long-term, it's apathy, because this is what we get when we're apathetic about our process, how it works, how we're supposed to be involved in our government. Because when we leave it up to just a few people, you get the kind of things that we get right now, which, whether it's Democrat or Republican, you get a small collection of a few people that get elected again and again and again. and then they use this government to wield it in whatever way they want to develop our communities, to rearrange, develop healthcare however they want to increase our taxes, whether we show up at forums or not, to tell them we don't want to do it, where they use shadow agencies like the IEDC and buy 11,000 acres in Boone County, or whether they say they don't agree with green energy policy, but they all go after the money, and then they implement it in our own communities with solar farms and wind farms and carbon sequestration farms. And it goes from the commissioners all the way to the top, to the 4th Congressional District congressman, because our congressman has the primary sponsor of the Carbon Sequestration Act, Collaboration Act, which brings more of this funding to the district, in Whiting, where BP is trying to bury all these pipes and sequester carbon, which is just the craziest thing you'd ever think of. Where our local commissioners and communities are going after these federal dollars by all these solar companies that are now talking to them first, not the community, to get into the local government so that they can develop these solar fields and these wind fields, which is only possible with our money. It's only made possible through these federal subsidies. And so our congressman is responsible for that. And only recently, has anyone noticed that there's been a slight change in the messaging of the congressman?
Yes.
It's become a little bit more conservative. Yeah. The most recent message was that he doesn't support Ukraine's endless war. Well, for real conservatives, we had that position from the very beginning. Conservatives feel that way. It doesn't help us here in our communities supporting what we know is a money laundering operation that's going on in Ukraine. And it's unbelievable what's happened in Ukraine. I just heard some of the most recent numbers. An entire generation of men have been wiped out in Ukraine. Did you guys know that? Yeah, they're destroying this country and telling us we're not patriotic if we don't believe in giving them more money so they can kill themselves. And our congressman voted for 3 of those spending bills before he got primaried, and was labeled as an A+ sponsor of funding in Ukraine. So these issues that are important to us, that are important to conservatives on the ground, we turn around as we're fighting them and complaining about them right here among ourselves, and we turn around and our elected representatives are the ones that are making it all possible. And that's like the most irksome thing, all right? So, that being said, I'd like to hear what you guys, I got a number of issues we can talk about. If you want to make a statement or ask a question, we've got a microphone here. And then I'd like to, after discussion, follow up with some, we can talk about the campaign, where we are, how we think we're doing, and then some asks, like dragging all your friends to the primary and making sure they vote in the primary. Joel, did you have something? You have a question? No? Yeah. Does anyone have a question? Yes, sir. Oh, yeah. Thanks, Mary.
I think something important would be defunding from Washington the money that's going to our schools that tie our schools up, all the red tape, all the money we spend on schools needlessly just to chase federal dollars. I think it's a big waste, and how can you stop that?
Well, the first thing you can do is come out as a candidate and say that that's your platform, and that is indeed our platform. One of the biggest things, I was down at an event with Michael Flynn that was the keynote there, and he made the point, and he brought up all of the evidence of how bad communism is for the world and how many hundreds of millions of people have died in communism, and said, well, you know what they take first? And my mind went to what, right? Guns, right? That's what we think. They take our guns, and then they can take us, and then they can do anything they want to us. And like, no, it's like they take your education systems first. That's what they take first. That was Saul Alinsky's plan, if you didn't know, to take over the teaching schools first. Like Ball State has a big teaching university. They take that school first, they indoctrinate those teachers that then go out and indoctrinate kids. So a big part of our platform has been defunding the Department of Education, which isn't that old anyway. It was established in 1983 or 1980, so it's not that old. Conservatives fought against this during the Reagan administration. It's not an old fight for us, that we've been trying to get it out. And that doesn't mean we don't believe in education. It means we don't believe in the federal government being involved in these decisions that should be at the state level. It's in our Constitution that the state's in charge of it, and pushed even further and further down as close to the people as possible, to teachers and parents. Most of you know I homeschool, and people have these crazy ideas about homeschoolers. But man, there's hundreds of children and dozens of parents that are involved in these co-ops. You know, no one cares about the education of their children more than parents do, or most parents do. And so I haven't seen what these accusations are. I'm a big advocate of getting the money back to the parents, back to the local communities, and then the state, you know, having more of the authority over that than the federal government. And there's already bills in there. There's already bills. Thomas Massey, just again, he's a primary sponsor of this defund the Department of Education bill, and that's something that a freshman representative, not legislator, would do. Is I would go look for those opportunities, look for those spots where they're already having this legislation, and then join them and find ways that you can move that forward or get support to it to try to defund some of those agencies. Yeah. And it's not just Department of Education, it's just like across the board. I mean, you name one, try to someone find out, try to think, I'd like to know an example of one sector, one entity that the federal government doesn't have some kind of regulation or some kind of impact in our lives. I mean, the federal government runs up to your doorstep, inside your door and in your home, the way they're taxing and spending our money and regulating our businesses and the things, our land, and the decisions that we make. I don't think, I mean, maybe there is one. I just can't think of one on the top of my head. Can you think of one? No? Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, sir. Yep.
Thank you. I would like to see term limits implemented from the local to the state to the federal level. And if you watch the news, and I know that it's hard to do, but if you watch the news, it made my mind go in the direction of, if a United States senator had a 2-term limit, how many nations would send him gold bars? Or if a U.S. senator had 2 terms that was his maximum, what foreign nation would wire millions of dollars into his checking account?
Yep. That's right.
So are you seeing a push across your platform or across the people that you've talked to for term limits?
I hear it everywhere I go. Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah. Every single place I go, that's what people ask about, is term limits. I was reminded not long ago on one of our social media platforms that I haven't been endorsed by U.S. term limits, but I signed the term limit pledge, and they wrote a press release and said, you know, we like that Charles Bookwalter has endorsed U.S. term limits. So I don't know how else to say it other than term limits endorsed us, but they kind of did, but they don't endorse candidates. But they really like it when you sign their pledge. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, they really like it.
Do you think that you first have to do the corruption in D.C. before you go to term limits?
I'm sorry?
Do you feel that you have to fix the corruption in D.C. before you go to term limits?
Yeah, that's hard to answer. That is the argument that people say is term limits has to be graduated in or titrated or however you want to look at it, because otherwise we'd get rid of good people like Thomas Massey who are actually doing something and fighting back, and bring in poor ones. So yeah, I think that's the intent, is to get there, do as much as you can to rein in the federal spending and defund some of these agencies, and then graduate it in so that as people are coming in, they come in and they're under those term limit standards, and then those that are gutting out have to graduate themselves out as well. But let's not forget that we already have term limits built into our system, and that's voting them out of office every 2 years. Like, that's the term limit, and that's what we have to do, and that's why you have to vote in the primary. Remember, the primary is the people's election. The 4th Congressional District is going to elect a bunch of Republicans. So the Republican primary is the election. So you have to go to the primary and determine who's going to go to the general and who's going to beat the Democrat in the general. So that's why the primary is so important. That's why it's so important for you to tell all of your friends and family members, if they are interested or concerned with the way of the country right now, they need to go vote in the primary, certainly. I was going to talk about inflation too, because it reminded me about education. You know, at no time, we're talking about this Department of Education. Remember that half the Indiana state budget goes to education, and it's like $48 billion is the state budget. So, you know, $25 billion is going to education already. At no time in history has the federal government and our government had more money and more power and influence over education than ever before. And never before have we fallen so far behind other standards of other countries. So when they tell you they want more money, we've already given it. If Democrats would just open their eyes, they would see that they get everything that they ask for. They just might have to wait a few more years as weak Republicans just cave again and again and again. They cave on these important issues. So I can't, like, Democrats get everything they want. They just don't get it as fast as they want. And we need to send Republicans there that aren't going to give anything. I'm tired of that whole thing about we need people working across the aisle and stuff. Like, that has not helped us. That has not gotten us anything as conservative Americans. I would say that we've never been in a worse situation in our lifetime. And it's not just me saying that. I'm only 47. I've talked to 90-year-olds that say that. I've talked to 25-year-olds that all say, they all agree with the same thing. They're confused. They're angry for different reasons. They either can't buy a home or they can barely afford their home anymore. They don't recognize their country, and they think they've lost complete control over who they vote for, who represents them, and anything that they have, any concerns they have about the government right now. And giving them all that responsibility and signing these spending bills, like Jim Baird recently signed Biden's $1.2 trillion spending bill. Well, inflation is a result of deficit spending. And if we're going to spend that kind of money, you shouldn't be surprised that you go to get fuel and it's almost $5, or our Jimmy John sandwiches are now $10. And when things go up in price, like, that is a result of them coming and saying, don't you want to fund Taiwan for a 25-year? Don't you want to go to a war with Iran for 25 years so the contractors can make all this money? Don't you want to do that? Well, no, we don't want to do that, and we see the effects of that after all of us have experienced it for all of our lives, our entire lives. We've seen that same response they have, and the same push towards bigger government, more war, more say in healthcare, more say in education, more say in green energy, more planning and centralized planning, and we pay for it all, and it doesn't help us, in my estimation. Any other questions? So I get asked a lot, and we'll close it out here real quickly if we have no more questions. I get asked a lot, like, how do I feel about the campaign? It's 2 weeks. We don't have much time to go. So for the first time, admittedly, in the entire campaign, I'm actually kind of, getting a little nervous about Election Day. And I have not been concerned. I've really very little anxiety, but we've worked a lot to get to this point. There's a lot of people working, but I just want to make some observations to people when they ask me, because there's a lot of misinformation going on out there. We did an internal poll, and we scored pretty well on that, double digits on that poll of a name recognition. We've outraised Jim Baird the last 2 consecutive fundraising quarters. We outraised Jim Baird. We're almost at $200,000 that we've raised for this campaign, which is a lot for someone running for the first time that has never been elected to office before. Jim Baird and their team has completely changed their messaging, the way they talk now. If you get their emails, now they're saying things like ending forever wars, and they're using verbiage that appeals to conservatives. They're using words that appeals to, like I was saying, at the candidate forum, when they say, hey, there was an government overreach on COVID. Yeah, and you did it, right? So they're using our language, but they were in those positions when it all occurred. Congressman Baird, just a week before filing, loaned his campaign another $200,000. So when that was April 15th, the primaries May 7th, Congressman Baird loaned himself $200,000 to finish out the rest of this term. So when people say to me, how do you think it's going? I look at that, I'm like, it's going very well. It's going very well. They've had to use their frank mail privilege and hammer you all with mailers that you paid for, those campaign mailers. You paid for them. And now they had to loan their campaign a lot of money. I'm getting a lot of attacks. I got my first death threat by so it's little things like that where you can see that our campaign is hitting a nerve, and a lot of these other grassroots campaigns are hitting the nerve of the people that don't want our voice to be heard, in my estimation. So we should be very excited about it. Our team has not let up at all. We're still knocking, I don't even know what the number is now, but it's around 3,000 doors a week is what our team knocks on. And most of these people have full-time jobs, and they're knocking in the evenings and on Saturday in different counties. And we're averaging around 3,000 a week, I'd say, at this point. So a few more weeks, we're gonna knock on another 5,000 to 10,000 doors. And we're getting so much good feedback. People are telling us when we go to the door, I already voted for you. We've already voted for you. So unless there's no other questions, I'll leave it on this. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Hold on. Oh, sorry.
Yep.
When I'm out door knocking, one of your beliefs there is about the paper ballots and election integrity. Can you kind of explain that?
Yeah.
Because I'm like, well, yeah, paper ballots are very simple. They'd be easy to keep track of. So
Yep.
Maybe you can explain that
absolutely.
a lot better.
Yeah, thanks for asking that question.
You're welcome.
It allows me to talk a little bit about this important issue. First of all, paper ballots and single-day voting is written in our Indiana Constitution. It says that we'll vote on one day. There's no mention of primaries, first of all. It says we'll vote on the first Tuesday in November. And it also states that we will take an election on a ballot. And remember, when our Constitution was written in the mid-19th century, a ballot in the dictionary is a slip of paper. That's a definition of ballot. So it's constitutional, first of all, that we should be doing that. Secondly, the federal government is not supposed to be involved in state elections. Does anyone out here know how the federal government is involved in our state elections in a major way? Anyone know? Yeah.
Thank you. I didn't know that.
All right.
But yes.
Yeah, so in 2000, that's right. It's the Help Americans Vote Act. In 2001, after the Hanging Chad incident, the governments decided that they needed to step in because us morons couldn't figure out how to do this on our own over a hanging Chad or whatever. Not to say that things don't happen, mistakes happen, but you just got to figure it out at the best of your ability at the local level. So they passed the Help Americans Vote Act, which gives the states millions of dollars to upgrade their systems and to be on voting machines. That's when all the voting machines started. It started in 2001 to 2005 time frame, and they started just inundating the states with voting machines. And the opponents to the Help America Vote Act said that you can't do this, federal government, because if you do this, the states are never going to be able to run their own elections. It's too expensive to do it the way you want us to do it. And now we do 1 month of voting, which means, excuse me, per diem for people at $125 a day. The polls are open for long periods of time. So it requires a lot more effort to do these instead of doing it on one day where the community is involved. That's what we saw out in the Iowa caucus, is they write it on a paper and they vote, and everyone wanted to be a part of it. They wanted to sit at the table, they wanted to vote, they wanted to count votes on their own. So when the government officials tell us that it's too hard to staff, I don't believe that. I think that if there was a concerted effort to get people to get involved and do it, there would be people behind it that would go. I've offered many times and they've not contacted me to help. So I'm an example of like just being passed over. I know many people have that story. Like I asked to get involved. I wanted to help and they didn't want my help. But Indiana this year got $2 million. And if we wanted to get back to one day of voting on paper ballots, we've got to get rid of that money. You take that federal money away from the state, then those clerks are going to go back to single day voting on ballots and hand count them immediately because they have no way, they can't afford to do it any way else. There's third-party organizations that have done the studies that have shown that one day of voting on paper ballots is way less expensive than the way we do it now, with the service contracts on these machines and the upgrades to these machines that have to happen every so often to keep them up to date. And it's frankly more secure. And the reasons it's more secure is because if you're going to commit fraud in the election, which almost no one denies there's fraud in an election, it's just that usually the people that profit from that fraud, they just say that it's not enough to change the outcome of the election, right? They're like, oh well, I mean, yeah, there's fraud, but it wasn't enough to. Okay, so you're admitting there's fraud. Okay, well now how do you know it's not enough to change the outcome of the election? Because everyone admits there's some form of fraud. There always have been. There have been 2 presidential elections in America that have been proven to be fraudulent. Nixon and Kennedy was one, and there was one in the 19th century. I can't remember who it was, but they've proven that there was manipulations and fraud that went on. It happens. But if it happens locally on paper ballots where you're hand counting, then you have to commit fraud at your local precinct with your neighbor standing right next to you. And that makes it way more difficult than some hacker in China or Russia hacking a machine, or some CIA agent out in Washington, D.C. doing something on computers that we know is happening. They do studies of this all the time. It's not conspiracy to think that these machines are vulnerable, and they have that potential. And so I say all that to say it's another example of how we have to get the federal government out of our state and local communities. That's very disruptive. It creates inflation with all these costs that we have to pay for. They say that they're going to make all these fixes. They need more power, more money, more taxes, and they're going to develop a perfect system. And now everything's never been more mismanaged in our entire lives. Healthcare is worse off than it has ever been. The elections, people don't trust them. The borders are completely insecure. We've been at war for 100 years now. The economy, we have double-digit inflation because they keep changing the definition of it. So it's being mismanaged like it's never been mismanaged before, in my estimation. Yes, sir.
I got a suggestion. I've thought about it for a long time. But just, let's say, voting for a month someplace.
Yeah.
I think we ought to have one day, first Tuesday in November, that's a national holiday.
Yep.
Everybody gets off work, and you vote from, pick a place, but Washington, D.C., 12 o'clock would be, from there, you vote for 24 hours, every state. So, I mean, if you, say you go to work, 8 o'clock in the morning. Either you go before or
Yep.
after. And everybody gets the same chance.
Yep.
But this early voting, I've done it, but just for the heck of it.
Yeah.
But I think, just one day, and everybody gets a chance to vote for the 24-hour period.
Yep. So again, I appreciate you opening that up because it allows me to just discuss it real briefly. People ask my legislative agenda. I tell them I don't really have one. You want to repeat it? A question? Okay. So I've already said that there's a very few things that I want to go write a law for out in Washington. We have enough laws. We either need to enforce them, and we need to de-legislate, we need to defund, de-legislate, and make the federal government much smaller. And we can't do that by sending representatives out there that just want to get their name on a bill. But one thing I did say is that I would sponsor legislation that creates a national holiday. One day of voting, a national holiday. We have I don't know how many holidays we have, but we have holidays that are silly, that are for silly things, and we don't even have a national holiday on the day of voting. We should definitely, it's one of the most important things that we do. So I appreciate what you're saying, and we've got it written down. It's on one of our platform points. Whenever I have to fill out those questionnaires from surveys, they ask me what kind of legislation would I would sponsor. That's my answer.
I got one here from Facebook, Charles. The question is, any thoughts on how voters aged 18 to 24 are feeling? I'm curious about that generation.
Yeah, so I speak to a few. I made a comment earlier. A lot of the parades and the fairs that I went to, we're talking to people of all different ages, and I would specifically seek out young families because I wanted to know the same thing. And just based on what I remember last summer, a lot of the concerns were affordability. Like they can't afford anything. They're both working and they can't save any money and they can't afford to buy a home. And if they're single, they're living with a parent. I heard that a lot of young 20-year-olds. A lot of other people said they just don't agree with the mainstream narrative that's going on around. People call it wokeism or woke, however you want to define that. I don't know. It's this mainstream narrative about social issues that they don't agree with. A lot of these young people in rural, where we are, in rural Indiana in the 4th District, there are a lot of people that don't agree with the idea that America is not exceptional, but America is the worst thing to happen to the world and to society. I would check them on that and say it's not. It's these governments. It's not the people. We have incredible Americans are wonderful people. America itself is a great idea. It's these governments that are so reckless across the world. I've said many times, all of us right here have more in common with an average Chinese person than we do with Hillary Clinton or Mitch Romney or all these guys or the Bushes. We have more in common with an average Chinese person, with an average Russian, with an average, anywhere across the world. We're all facing the same things. We're trying to take care of our families. We're trying to serve our communities. It's the governments that do this to us and then tell us that we need to kill each other for 100 years. It's the governments are responsible for that. So don't believe anyone when they say, "Oh, you need to go bomb Ukraine." They're crazy. They don't know what they're thinking. They don't know what they're saying. They've never seen that before. They've never seen what that looks like. I don't think they understand what they're saying when we need to bomb or fund the bombing all over the world for 100 years. I think that's crazy. But they are concerned to get back to it. So we're walking out with a gun case. That's nice. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
Do you know what voting we use here in
Yes.
Hendricks County?
Yep. Microvote. The question was, what voting system do we use here in Hendricks County? And I believe it's Microvote. Microvote has almost all 92 counties in Indiana. Microvote is a local company out of the 4th District in Zionsville, Indiana is where they're headquartered.
Okay.
Yeah.
And my other question is, what do you do when your congressman and your senator, one of them, won't even answer your emails and questions anymore?
Yeah. So the question is,
A really good
Yeah.
question.
Yeah. What do you do when your congressman and your senator, one of them, won't even answer your emails anymore? And it's basically because they call them out and they don't want to be held responsible.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you supposed to do to get through to them? Don't vote for that.
yeah. Well, I can tell you what you're going to do. You need to vote for me in the primary. That's what you need to do. I mean, that's,
Whatever you vote for doesn't always work, you know.
it doesn't. And we've all been burned so many times by this that, you know, who am I to say? I get that. How do you know? How can I trust you're not going to go out and get corrupted? I can't even answer that question. It's so you can't. We've been burned so many times. But I say that flippantly. But honest, that's why I say that's. So we got 2 weeks left. I knocked on, I don't know, 50 doors today. And my main message and the message of all the people that are knocking on doors right now is that you have to vote in the primary. The primary is the election in our district. So if you're concerned with how you're being represented in Washington, D.C., you've got to vote in the primary. You got to tell your friend to vote in the primary. You have to call your brother and tell them, and your sister and all your friends, and you have to drag them to the primary and say, I'm done listening to you complain. You have to go vote in the primary for the candidate that's going to represent us, because it's not going to be a Democrat. And if you have any question about that, you can go watch our Facebook Live. I debated the two Democrats. Just go watch for yourself, and you tell me how serious these Democrats are that are running for Congress.
We all have family members that are Democrats.
I'm not talking about these are the two candidates. Yeah, and so you have to engage in the primary. And here's something else that we've talked about in our campaign, what it would look like if we won in the primary. Well, we've already said we'd like to have 3 or 4 offices throughout the district, and we're going to continue doing these town hall meetings. So they may not be every Thursday like we do now, but we would do them once or twice a month out in Washington, D.C. to make sure that we're answering your questions and we're talking to you all and we're telling you everything that's going on in D.C. And I'm going to have to explain to you why I'm voting the way that you may not like, right? I'd have to say, look, I know many of you don't like the fact that I didn't vote for this spending bill because it gave Hendricks County $2 million to grow gerbil feed in the swampland or something with solar power. Yeah. And and the people at Hendricks County will be like, why didn't you do that? You don't care about us. We want that $2 million. Let's say it's not constitutional. If we were all together, remember, we were talking about inflation and all that, and we can't do it. So we just have to, it's not redefining the roles of these elected representatives that we're running for. It's demanding that they get back to their original intent, the original focus of what it was, is to be a representative of the people to the government, not be the representative of the government to the people. And so that should be your requirement. And if you elect me in the 4th district and I fail you and I don't do what I'm saying by being in this district, like I say, I'm rebuilding this party, bringing people in to engage in politics, then you better fire me. And you hold me accountable, and you practice term limits, and you don't let me serve another 2 years, and you bring somebody else in. That's the way this is supposed to happen. I know it's frustrating. I hear that all the time. And we get a lot of messages and phone calls, and I try to return all of them, and I'm sure I've missed a few. But if someone send me a few, I'd get back to them. But we just have to have our standards. We have to keep our standards and hold them high and have that expectation and not go away and stay committed to it. Yep. And drag people to the primary. All right. Any other questions tonight? Nope. All right. Well, again, thank you for your time. Anyone out there, go to bookwalterforcongress.com, or you can go to Twitter at TCBookwalter. At TCBookwalter is Twitter. We have another town hall tomorrow night that will be live, and Saturday will be live, and next Tuesday will be live, and next Thursday I think we'll be live on these town hall events. So thank you very much for your time and your support here tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching the Charles Bookwalter Digital Town Hall. For more information about Charles Bookwalter and the Bookwalter for Congress campaign, visit bookwalterforcongress.com.